Hello everyone, this is Maureen and welcome to My Crochet Story. Today is Tuesday, February the 6th. I had to stop and think a minute, isn't that crazy? And I am here to show you this lovely little stitch from my floral stitch series. But before I get to that, let me tell you thank you to all of you that are stopping in to see this stitch. Now, I know that you have probably seen this stitch 100 times, if not more. But, you know, it's always kind of nice to look at somebody else's way of doing things, and maybe the way I do this stitch might help some of you out there, especially if you are new to the stitch. This is called the FLORET stitch. I really love it. It is just a simply great little stitch that gives a lot of texture and detail. You can see there. It is very flat on the bottom, so it does give you a very distinct right side and wrong side. What I have shown here for you is the traditional stitch you set up with a row of double crochets and then the floret stitch itself. Row of double crochets and then again the floral stitch. But I also wanted to give you the option of, if you don't want this much gap between your floret stitches, you can use the half double crochet, and it doesn't do anything as far as stretching it out or shrinking it in. You could also, if you wanted your floret stitches a lot closer, you don't want that much separation between them, you can also use a row of single crochet stitches. Now, my preference, 9 times out of 10, I'm going to use the traditional double crochet row before I do that. But I have found that whenever I'm using the floret stitch for a hat, I will invariably use this half double crochet separation because it makes it a lot easier for me to also use the half double crochet when I want to do sections of it, you know. But anyway, we're going to look at this stitch here in just a few minutes, but let me say, after all of that, thank you so much for all of you being here, especially those of you that come in time after time whenever I upload a video. Now, if this is your first time here, welcome in. I'm hoping that you're here to not only see what the floret stitch is, but maybe find a different way of creating it. If you like this little tutorial, please go and check out all the other content on my channel. And then if you like what you see, there's going to be a little subscribe button down here in the corner. Hit that subscribe button and then look for the bell that has those little, they're called parentheses, but I like to call them hugs because it'll let you know every time I upload some content if you click on it. And speaking of content, if y'all don't mind, please, I would greatly appreciate you sharing this out to your family and friends because, like I said, there's always more than one way to do a stitch tutorial, and this is just how I like to set it up. So if you're ready, I'm going to be using a 4-weight. I'm using this pretty mint color. It's a mint ombre from from Red Heart Super Saver. I'm sorry that is awful close. Let me see if I can zoom that out there just a little bit. There you go. It is Red Heart Super Saver. It is a 4-weight acrylic. You can wash it and dry it. This particular skein has, let me come over here and look. Where are you? 482 yards or 444 meters. This is a 10 ounce or 283 gram ball. And as I said, the color here is called spearmint. So you can use any yarn that you want to use. Just be sure you use an appropriate hook size. I am going to be using this very pretty cookies and cream resin hook from Furls, and it is an H, but like I said, you can use any one that you want to use. So I'm going to give you just a minute for you to go and grab you some yarn and a hook, or if you want to, you can just sit back, and when everyone is ready, we'll get started here doing the floret stitch. Be right back. Alright, so I have gone ahead and put an even number of chains on my hook which I'm going to start out with 26. Now the one thing I want you to notice here is that my chains are pretty consistent in size and tension, and I'm always stressing that you need to make sure, in order to set up your garment or whatever it is you're going to be making, you want your chains to be as consistent as possible. And also whenever you're setting up your first row, I don't care what kind of stitch you're using, whether you're going right into your stitch or if you're doing a setup row of single crochets, doubles, just whatever, you want to take your time to set your stitches up in the very beginning of your project. So I have 26. I'm going to single crochet into the second stitch from the chain on my, in the second chain, excuse me, from my hook. Remember, the loop here does not count as a chain. And then we're going to do one whole row all the way down of single crochets. Now you can build your single crochets in this top loop of every chain across, or like I'm going to do, excuse me, you can roll your chain over and work in these back loops of your chain. I like that because to me it gives a little bit more solid and even look to my first row here, but you can do either one. So I'm going to roll over again, second chain from the hook, and I'm going to put in a single crochet. And then we're just going to do single crochets all the way down. And like I said, take your time, because you want these stitches, excuse me, to be as consistent as possible. See how pretty that sets that up? Now I know this can be tedious, especially if you have a really long chain, like say 152, 100 and, you know, whatever. Like I had to have 196 chains for my mosaic that I'm starting. And very first row is a row of single crochets. So you can imagine being very patient and setting that first row up. So I'm just going to let you go ahead and finish up this first row, and we'll be back and start so that we can start building our floret stitch. Alright, I'm coming down to the last stitch of my row. There we go. And as you can tell, by taking your time, you have a nice row of single crochets, or whatever this row is going to be when you're starting your project. Now we're going to chain one and turn our work. Now here is one area in which my stitches are going to vary just a little bit from any other creator that you've seen do a tutorial on this stitch. Many times they'll tell you to chain 3, and that's going to count as your first stitch. I don't like using a chain 3 at the beginning of any row if I can get away from it, because it just leaves a gap between this first stitch here, which we allow the chain 3 to count as a stitch, and the double crochet that we're going to do in the next stitch. I just don't care for that. Plus, to me, it allows for a little bit more give here along the edge, which doesn't help to keep your edge nice and straight. So what I do instead is, when we chain one, we're just going to go right ahead and build a double crochet in this very first stitch. And it's going to fill in this gap here, and we're not going to have any issues there. But that's just me. Now if you would rather chain 3 and do so, that's fine. Like I said, that's just the way I like to do it. See how it keeps that nice and full in through there. And then when we come back along and finish out this row here, it'll pull that stitch up and it'll be just fine. So work 1 double crochet per stitch all the way across, and I'll meet you at the end of the row where we will learn how to do the floret stitch. So I'll meet you there in just a moment. Alright, we're coming down to the last 2 stitches of the row. There we go. And then we're going to chain 1 and turn our work. Now this is the row that will start our floret stitch. So again, one other little trick that Maureen does is, in most tutorials they'll tell you to start this row with a slip stitch and then a double crochet. Well, I do mine a little bit different. Again, I'm going to start my row with a single crochet, and then I'm going to do a slip stitch. Now when you're working a slip stitch, be sure that you give it enough flex. Don't make it tight, because you're going to come back and work into that in just a little bit when you're working in the next row. So make sure you don't do it tight. And then in the next stitch we're going to do a double crochet. Now the repeat of the floret stitch is a slip stitch in the next stitch, and then a double crochet in the next stitch. A slip stitch into the next stitch. Remember, try to keep it loose. And then a double crochet into the next stitch. Slip stitch and a double crochet into the next stitch. I'm going to stop you here just a moment. It doesn't look like much on this side, does it? But your stitch is actually developing on the back side of your work here. Sorry, that little fuzz is bothering me. Okay, so you're working on the back side, and your floret stitch is always going to show up on the opposite side from what you're working. Alright, so just continue repeating with a slip stitch, keeping it loose, and then a double crochet in the next stitch. So you're just alternating between slip stitch, double crochet, slip stitch, double crochet, all the way down to the end of the row. And I'll come back and meet you here in just these last 2 stitches. So be right back. Alright, so I've made it all the way across here. I made a slip stitch. I'm going to make a double crochet, a slip stitch, and then I'm going to end with a single crochet here into that very first double crochet from the beginning row. And as I said, then when we chain 1 and turn our work, let me get this pulled out so you can see it, there is your little floret stitch all the way across. Alright, so this next row becomes our double crochet row. So this is a 2-row repeat. You're going to do a row of double crochets and then a row of floret stitches, a row of double crochets, a row of floret stitches. Well, let's see, I need my working yarn, get that up there. There we go. We'll get going here in a second. So I've chained 1, and again, just like I did in this first stitch here, I'm going to chain 1, but in this very first stitch, instead of chaining 3, I'm going to put a double crochet. And then we're going to do a double crochet in the slip stitch. That's why you didn't want to do it tight. And then a slip stitch in the top stitch here of our floret stitch. Double crochet into the slip stitch. And then a double crochet into our floret stitch. just the top of it. And again into the top of the floret stitch. And you're going to do that all the way across. Alright, so I'll meet you down at the end of the row here in just a moment. Alright, I'm come down to my last slip stitch here. Then I'm going to go into my single crochet right there at the end. Alright, so now it shows off the little floret stitches. And what I want you to notice here in the back is that it's just a flat piece of textile, which really does help you to determine or to see which is your wrong side and which is your right side. Now I'm going to do one more row of the floret stitch, and then I'm going to show you a little bit of a variation in case you don't want this much gap between your floret stitches. So again, we're going to chain one and turn our work. Remember, I start out my row with a single crochet, and then we go right into the slip stitch to make the floret stitch, and then we go to the next stitch and make a double crochet. Floret stitch, and then a double crochet. And just like we did on row 3, we're just going to continue that pattern. Let's see, I did a double crochet, now I need to do a slip stitch. Double crochet and a slip stitch all the way down, when we will end with a slip stitch and a single crochet in the very last stitch. So I'll meet you down there in just a few moments. Alright, I've come to the end of my row. I just made my last slip stitch, and in this very last stitch here I'm going to do my single crochet. Chain one and turn my work. And so now we have 2 rows of our little floret stitch. Now these 2 rows are separated by a double crochet, but if you don't want this much distance between here, you can always, instead of doing a double crochet, you can do a half double crochet. So I'm going to just go ahead and go right back into this first stitch and do a half double crochet. Remember, that's 3 loops on your hook. And then into the top of the slip stitch, we'll do a half double crochet. Into the top of the floret stitch, we'll do a half double crochet. And we're going to do that all the way across, putting a half double crochet instead of the double crochet into the top of each stitch all the way across. And I'm doing this to show you that you do have an option when you're using the floret stitch, depending on what you're going to use to make it with. Now I like using the half double crochet, especially when I'm using the floret stitch in a hat, because it brings the floret stitches together a little more, which will show up once we put in another row of floret stitches. But I wanted to take the time to show you the difference between using a double crochet row and a half double crochet row, to just give you maybe an extra option when you choose to use the or do the floret stitch, because you wouldn't think that there would really be that much difference, but there is. There it is, looking for that little slip stitch there. And we're coming down here at the end of the row. Going to put in our last half double crochet, chain 1, turn our work. Now we're ready to put in another row of the floret stitch. So I'm just going to put in my first single crochet, do my slip stitch, and do my double crochet to do my floret. Slip stitch, double crochet. Now you know how to do this here, so I'm going to stop myself here for just a minute and catch up with you down at the end of the row so that you can see what I'm talking about as to whether you wish to use a double crochet or a half double crochet. I was getting ready to make a half double crochet there for the floret stitch. That would not have worked. Alright, so I'll meet you back at the end of the row here in just a minute. Alright, I'm here at the end of my row. I've done my last double crochet. I'm going to do my last slip stitch and then do a single crochet to finish out the row. Now I just want to show you. Notice the difference here between these rows when you're just looking at your floret stitch and your double crochets, floret stitch, double crochet, floret stitch. And now look at the floret stitch, half double crochet, and floret stitch. It brings it in just a little bit tighter, which you might like whenever you're making a hat or possibly a baby blanket. Something that you want to really see have a little bit more texture, squishiness if you'd like. But I just wanted to show you a little bit of a variation there. Now I want to come back to this idea of using the chain 1 and double crochet here at the very beginning. Notice how it helps to keep your edges straight, because at the end of the row you're always going to end with a double crochet. But the beginning of the row, although might look just a little bit thick there in that stitch, but you know what, there's not a gap. And the thing that I find a lot of times whenever I'm starting a row with a chain, it tends to get a little wonky, you know what I mean? It doesn't have enough structure there on the edge for me. And that's the only reason why I offer a lot of times to do a chain 1 and then do the double crochet, or the chain 1 and then do the triple crochet, as opposed to using chains to start my row. But that's Maureen. If you would rather stick with the chains, then that's fine too, because it is your piece. Well, I hope you made it all the way to the end of the video here and like my little take of doing the floret stitch. If you do, please, as I asked in the beginning, share it out with your family and friends, because remember, I always like to say, there is more than one way to skin a cat, and we all learn differently, and sometimes seeing a different technique or a different way of doing the exact same stitch clicks with someone else if it doesn't click with them the way tradition is normally shown to do it. Again, like I said, I hope you enjoyed this little tutorial. If you did, thank you so much. Leave me a thumbprint and a comment down in the comment section what you liked about it, what you didn't like about it, because remember, I do like criticism so long as it's given in love. So until next time, please remember, be the light out there in the darkness for someone today, because you never know, maybe you're light that they need to see. I love you all. Bye.